Rachel Levy is looking to flip the seat that Republican Buddy Fowler has held in the 55th House of Delegates district. This is a Virginia Scope production. My name is Brandon Jarvis, and my co-host Marques Jones and I talked to Rachel today about her campaign and how she's trying to flip the 55th House district. The 55th district is made up of Spotsylvania, Caroline, and Hanover counties. All right, Rachel, so pretend that I'm someone who doesn't know anything about you and I just moved to the district. In 60 seconds-ish, explain what you would want me to know about you.
I am a mother of three. I am a public school teacher. I'm a leader in my community. I have a PhD in education, and I'm a longtime member of the Hanover Democratic Committee. I'm a leader in a group called Together Hanover. I'm a member of the Hanover NAACP. I've served as a board member and president of my kids' PTAs. I have been a fixture at school board and board of supervisors meetings. I'm currently president of my local education association, and I serve on the board of my synagogue.
So I think sometimes fairly and sometimes unfairly, Democrats are accused of ignoring rural voters, right? Concentrating on populated areas and ignoring rural voters. I'm from Southwest Virginia, so I understand that feeling more than most kind of in Central Virginia. So talk about, what you feel like Democrats bring to the table for rural areas and how how Democrats can actually be champions for rural residents.
Yeah, so that has long been a frustration of mine, that the party does not invest in more conservative districts and in rural districts. And it's very short-sighted that they don't do that. And not just the party, supporters of Democrats, because when Democrats in these districts are ignored, they stay home. And they don't just stay home for elections like mine. They stay home for the top of the ticket. They stay home for congressional races. They stay home for local races. They stay home for presidential races. That's not as common as the other ones. And so really an investment in races like mine is an investment in voters like who will vote for me or likely vote for people like me. And it's an opportunity to build the party. It's an opportunity to expand the base. And if they see another party, they see the Republican Party courting their vote, then if they're independents or they're not aligned with any party necessarily, then they're going to go with that other party because they'll see them as courting them and as trying to get things done for them.
So what made you decide to run for this seat this year, this cycle?
Well, I've wanted to run for office for a while. I was asked to run for this seat in 2017, but I was in the middle of I was full-time PhD student, and I'm an all or nothing person, and I didn't want to get deterred from that. I wanted to finish the program. I wanted to finish my dissertation. I wanted to earn that PhD. And so I decided not to. And I was so pleased when Morgan Goodman stepped up and ran. She ran twice. I supported her. I volunteered for her. I advised her on education policy. I also did the same thing with the candidate who ran before her, Tony Radler. And I was interested in running. I checked with Morgan. I checked with some other people who I thought might have been thinking about running. And I was encouraged to run this time, and it was the right time for me. So I decided to step up and do it. And sort of in line with what Marques said, there is now, it's not perfect, but every cycle there's more support for candidates like me in districts like mine that comes from the Democratic Party.
So what are the core issues that you're kind of putting in front of voters this time around?
Strengthening our public schools and making sure they're fully funded by the state is a huge one. The 55th district, the two most shared institutions are our public schools and our faith communities. And so almost everyone sends their kids to public schools in the 55th district. And across the board, people want strong, fully funded public schools, and they want school buildings that are renovated and replaced as they should be. And they want their teachers and their educators and their educational staffers to be paid and compensated what they should be competitively and fairly. The second issue is access to healthcare, especially mental health care. The third issue I'm especially running on is protecting the environment and conserving our natural resources, especially our rural land. Across the board, folks are concerned about overdevelopment and losing the rural landscape and the rural way of life. Broadband access is a huge issue across the board again, and that doesn't just impact students during the pandemic. It impacts students before the pandemic. It impacts people who work from home. It impacts small business owners. And frankly, it impacts property values. And also making sure that we have some more positive outcomes coming out of our criminal justice system.
So you mentioned earlier that the Democrats haven't always invested in rural districts, and that kind of, you didn't necessarily say it suppresses turnout, but you said it doesn't help you get the votes, the Democratic votes. So what are you doing to try and drive these voters who might not have come out to vote for the Democrat in the past years? What are you doing to try and bridge that divide and get them to come and vote for you on election day?
So we're doing a few things. We're working with a data analytics team with Bluebonnet. Bluebonnet is an organization that works with campaigns like mine. They are not political per se, although they support Democrats. They are data people. And so we took, we used the van and other publicly available sources of information. And we found, so there are 60,000 voters in the 55th approximately, and 20,000 of them were no data. And so we used a formula and took those 20,000 voters and put a kind of like a likelihood score that they would support me given different factors. And then we are reaching out. So we've identified those voters, and then we are reaching out to those voters, knocking doors, making phone calls, sending texts, sending postcards, and then we're giving them a reason to vote, right? Somebody who cares about them, somebody who wants to make their lives better, and somebody who will enact policies and programs that will help them and help all of us, and help them no matter who they are, what they look like, who they love, or really how they vote. So I want to help people who might not, there's going to be some people I want to help who might not vote for me. And that's the other thing about running in a district like mine. You have to be willing to, you have to accept that some of the people who aren't going to vote for you, you have to represent them, and you have to help them and make their lives better too.
I'll also say though, I think sometimes people forget that it wasn't too long ago where the Democratic Party got a lot of rural votes. I mean, I know when I grew up in West Virginia is about as rural as you can get, and it was straight Democratic. Southwest Virginia was really Democratic back, not too long ago either. 20 years ago, right? So I think people's tastes and minds can be changed, right? And no district is well, I won't say no district is a lost cause, but most districts aren't lost cause. And that you if you get people excited and you can get the money in there to help you get the message out, then that raises the chances that you can succeed, right?
That's exactly right. I mean, that's what it's all about. And we're reaching out to people who are Democrats, but who don't vote or align with Democratic values, but who don't vote or who don't vote very often, or who are new voters. So that's our other universe. And it will pay off in the long run to expand the base. It'll pay off in other elections. And I would say also, and this, as a president of my education association, I would like to see the Virginia Education Association and other unions and labor groups invest more in working class people in rural districts, because there's lots of them, and we have common interests. And I think that's a missing piece too. It's not just the Democratic Party, it's other organizations that would have natural constituencies among working class people in more rural places. Like you said, places where it used to be heavily Democratic and then wasn't.
So you're an educator. What more on this, and you can get into the details here. You don't have to talk at a mic or a macro level. What more would you like to see from the General Assembly's point of view?
Well, I mean, there is some special funding for facilities, but Virginia as a state, every state has a different facilities funding policies and programs. We need a more robust grant program or funding stream for our public school buildings. And then I mentioned fairly compensating and competitively compensating educators and teachers and education staffers. There is also working conditions, though. We need to improve, class sizes could be smaller. The standards of quality is what the General Assembly and in conjunction with the State Board of Ed pass. And basically the state is only responsible for funding the standards of quality, right? But the cost of doing business and providing a quality education goes way beyond the SOQs. So I think the state needs to look at providing funding that goes beyond the SOQs. For example, when the state says, oh, we gave teachers a 5% raise, that raise only goes to the SOQ funded positions. It doesn't go to everybody else. And so that puts localities in a pickle where they're saying, well, if I accept this state money, but I only give a raise to the SOQ funded positions, what's going to happen with the other employees? We're all one community here. We're all one employee base. So I would like to see the state do that. I would like to see the state, when you look at the governor's schools, I would like to see the state come up with a more like standardized and more equitable admissions process for the governor's schools. And that would have to be in conjunction with the localities, but I think that's important. The state needs to fund higher education, the institutions of community colleges and institutions of public higher education. Those, we need to reinvest in those as well. So that's just a handful of the things I would like to see done. And some improvements that are needed in education, I don't know that they can be legislated. I do know that we need to stop unfunded mandates. That's very important. But like autonomy, trusting teachers more, treating teachers like professionals, having them give more input into their practice. I don't know that we can legislate all of that, but I will look at how we might be able to legislate some of that.
So I'm on board with all of that. Both my parents are teachers and my brother's a school counselor. So I think I'm the only one that didn't get the teacher bug. But so I get asked oftentimes, people will call me and they'll say, I'm thinking about running for office. Should I run? Should I run? And I always tell them, don't run if you just want to run. It's too hard. You have to only run if you need to run. If there's something in you that you just can't stand it anymore, you have to do something about it, right? You can't sleep at night because you want to change something, right? What was that thing that put you over the edge where you had to run? You just saw things that were going on and you had to put yourself out there, because it's not a picnic, right? You said you have 3 children. All the time you're spending away from your children and splitting time with your work. Like, talk about what made you want to take on this challenge.
Well, there's 2 things. First of all, we don't really have representation right now. We have someone who occupies a seat, and Democrats aren't the only ones who feel that way. And so if I do say so myself, I'm a very competent person, and incompetence really bothers me. And I'm also a highly ethical person, and people who are unethical, like the current seat holder is, that also really bothers me. And I have a strong work ethic, and the current representative does not. So that when I see something being poorly done, especially when you're a public servant and you take public money and you're supposed to do your job, that energizes me and mobilizes me. But the other thing is that I've been a leader and in my community for a long time, and I've accomplished a fair amount of things. I've helped to build a certain infrastructure, build awareness, and I felt like as a leader, as a community leader, I had hit my limit in how I could make change and what change I could make. And just like, so you say everyone in your family is a teacher. Everyone in my family is a lawyer. I'm the daughter of 2 civil rights lawyers. And my mother and my sister's a lawyer. My cousin's a lawyer. I've got uncles who are lawyers. My mother and father for some amount of time specialized in education. And I watched her, and my mother was an activist. I grew up in Washington, D.C., and I watched her trying to change things and get a better public education system in DC from the outside. And one reason I became a teacher is to change things from the inside. And it's the same thing with my leadership in my community. After a while, from the outside, there's only so much you can do. If you could have a lot of influence, you could have a lot of goodwill built up, but if you don't have any power to help people, then it gets real frustrating. And so that was the other thing that propelled me. I felt like I had hit the wall of what I could do just as a community leader. And I wanted to actually be in a position to actually make positive change and actually be an official representative of people instead of the person that people call to do stuff. And I say, well, I'll try to help you. Let me see what I can do.
And before Brandon cuts us off, because he has a knack for doing that, what do you say to Republicans that you're going to have to have some of those crossovers to be successful? What do you say to Republicans that may be open to voting for someone different because of all of the things that you've said? What do you say to make the case to them that Rachel Levy is who they should mark on their ballot when early voting starts not too long from now?
Well, I'd say a few things. First of all, you don't live where I live in Hanover County and have the profile I do without having lots of conversations and working alongside with Republicans. And the Republicans that I know here who act in good faith, they know I act in good faith and they respect me. And so I have a track record, first of all. And second of all, I'll say this, that I don't compromise on my values, and I don't compromise on treating people with dignity and respect, but I know how to work with people, and I'm very practical, and I know how to get things done. And I know how to, come up with a common goal and work for that. And maybe you don't get everything you want when you make that legislation or you make that change, but if you get something, that's a start. And so, and I am a hard worker, and people know that. They know I'm smart. They know I have a strong work ethic. They know I'm honest. They know I'm a hard worker. And I think that those things could, and they know I'm fair and that I am independent minded. And I think those are the things that could sway more conservative people to cast a vote for Rachel Levy.
All right, Rachel, thank you for talking to us.
Thanks for having me.
I knew he was getting ready to do that. I knew it. That's why I slipped in the last question.